Hello and welcome to the final um, parent-teacher conference um, in our toolkit. This is based upon the feedback given by our professor. One of the bits of feedback is that brevity is key, so we will limit this to 15 to 20 minutes. The other is to eliminate some of the scientific and pedagogical terminology that was used in the first iteration. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dan McCloskey.
Hello.
Hi. And we are going to be talking about his first grade student, Victoria, in Mrs. Weber, that would be me, in my first grade classroom. So, Mr. McCloskey, thank you so much for joining me for our parent-teacher conference.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. First of all, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your time with us. I want to tell you that Victoria is a wonderful student. She's absolutely wonderful. One of the things I love about Victoria is that she shares readily experiences outside of the classroom, things that she's doing with her family, not just things that she's doing in the home. But for example, she just shared that she had gone to Mannheim Steamroller with you and your father and Mrs. Weber, excuse me, Mrs. McCloskey, as well as some family friends. So these things not only are good to experience, but they readily integrate themselves into classroom experiences. So I want to thank you for that.
My
What are your
pleasure.
feelings on that?
The body fuels the mind, and those experiences, I think, really help create interest and joy in learning new things. And anything that we can do to create that atmosphere that's what we're going to do.
I agree with you. I think that's absolutely wonderful. I do think that these experiences lend themselves to success in and out of the classroom because things that you are teaching your child outside of the classroom comes into the classroom as far as their experience is concerned. So I want to thank you very much for that. Before the school year started, we sent you a questionnaire, and you also attended the a day in the life of a first grader. With that, there were three areas we asked you what you wanted to focus on or foster growth within with regards to Victoria. And they were continuing to strengthen reading concepts, continuing to develop social concepts in reciprocal play, and continuing to develop math skill sets reciprocal to the age appropriate standards. My question is twofold. Number one, how do you feel she's doing with regards to those concepts?
I think she's progressing. I know that her reading at home has was transitioning from kind of that choppy, word recognition and very kind of slow, muddling reading to something that's much more fluent and much more much better as far as conveying the story and the feelings therein. So I think she's progressing well in her reading.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that in her play, she's growing up. She's starting to relinquish the command that she always tried to have in play relationships. She's certainly beginning to take direction from other kids rather than just trying to play her own game with other people involved and trying to direct play rather than enjoy play. And then what was the last one? The age appropriate.
Continuing to develop math skill sets reciprocal to age appropriate standards.
So I think since math has always been rather difficult for myself and my wife and family and beyond, I think it's important that she has a good basis in mathematics, that we do the best that we can to make math interesting. I know that we practice some at home. I'm sure that we could practice more with a sister that's 2 years older. She's very interested in, she's more interested in doing her sister's math, I think, than her own. And so you need to kind of rein her in, and while allowing her to enjoy that, to say, okay, well, you really need the building blocks before you get there. So I think she's progressing and learning. I'm happy with all three of those 3 points that we started out with in the beginning of the year, and look forward to where she ends up.
Okay, okay. Well, I want to go ahead and start out with, and we will touch upon these as we go through this, but I want to go ahead and start out with a parent-to-teacher guide to progress reports for kindergarten through grades 5 that was sent out to you at the beginning of the year. Obviously, your daughter went from kindergarten to grade 1 this year, so that you have benchmarks of what they should be learning, and what the expectations are as far as the state and local standards. So you can go ahead and see where she is as far as being on track, based upon our school system and our state and local requirements. Do you have any questions on those right now?
I do not.
Okay, you're okay with that. And like I said, we sent that out at the beginning of the year, and I know that you had any questions, you can definitely feel free to email or call me at any time. I also want to point out to you that a letter was sent out in October of this year with regards to the measures of academic progress assessments, or MAP testing, which your daughter Victoria is going through. So these are, as you and I have talked about, as far as open houses and private conversations and whatnot, these are benchmarks. These are measurements in time. They are not set standards. These are, progressional standards that go on throughout the school year. So we've set aside those assessment standards. As you can see, Victoria is doing very well. She is at a 69% math level and a 76% reading level. So she is above average in both of the two major domains of study at this point. So she's doing very, very well. With regards to your areas of growth, as far as continuing strengthening of reading concepts, I want to go ahead and provide you with a couple of bits of information. The first of which is just letter recognition, how to go about working with your child at home, incongruent to what we're learning in school as far as what she's doing, as far as letter recognition, name recognition, word recognition, how to properly write those letters. For example, going down and around versus how they may have done it in kindergarten and pre-K. The other thing I want to talk to you about as far as that is concerned, as far as reading is concerned. We always stress we would like for you to read to your children 20 minutes per night. It may seem like a lot given everything you've got going on with other children, with extracurricular activities and whatnot, but that 20 minutes is critical as far as what they will be learning in the classroom. They have a book that they are assigned per week. They are to read that book at least 2 times per week, to take it home to read 2 times per week. So that's at least 4 times per week that they are being exposed to this language. One of the things that I like to express to my parents is that practice makes permanent. The more you practice, you may seem to think that it's redundant to read the same thing over and over and over again, but at the same time, your child is learning phonetic awareness, your child is learning word recognition, and by talking and communicating with your child, you are helping them with the entire literary process. So that's one thing that I definitely recommend as far as writing is concerned. You know, our children are doing writing as far as journals, and I want to go ahead and share with you. One of the things that your daughter, that Victoria, wrote to her mother, and you can see that not everything is spelled correctly. Again, everything is spelled phonetically, but at the same time, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end as far as sentence construction is concerned. That's another thing that we're working on. One thing that I would recommend that you do, and I know that you've done really since preschool, is work on making lists and, excuse me, encouraging sight words. Everything from familiar signs such as McDonald's or Kroger's or even Starbucks. And working with your child, you know, pointing those out to her. Are you doing that at this point?
Yeah, we do. There was a list that was sent home of sight words, and she was very excited to cut those words up and utilize them as flashcards. And so we ran through the sight words that she had as flashcards and did really very well at it.
Yep. Yes. And as we told you before, as far as reading and sight words is concerned, at the end of this year, your child should be able to identify, be able to identify up to 75% of 200 sight words. And Natalie's well on her way to doing that. So she's doing very, very well in that respect. And like I said, we've encouraged you to read the 20 minutes per night. Are you doing that? Okay.
Yeah, she'll bring home her books that she has. We'll read through those, and then typically we'll pick out another story that is from our own bookshelf, and she'll read through that, whether she's memorized it and is reading it from heart, or whether it's something new that she's touching on for the first time. Obviously, the ones that she's memorized, she goes through much quicker than the ones that she has to work at a little bit. And we make sure that she's reading each and every word, and you know, if she tends to blow past certain words and put her own words in, so we make sure to back up and actually read the sentence as it's written. So that's something we're working on.
I've noticed that with her, and at this age, it's not necessarily critically important that they read it word for word. They are still looking at the pictures on the page in order to glean the meaning of the story. One thing that we want to start working towards is working past pointing towards every word and working towards getting the sentence as a whole. And it sounds like you're doing that, so I think that's a wonderful thing. As far as math is concerned, again, we talked about continuing to develop math skills reciprocal to age-appropriate standards. How do you feel that's going?
We tend to quiz in the car as we're going places. We'll talk about simple math problems, and you know, how many cows do you see on the side of the road? Well, what happens if one cow walks away? How many do you have that? And so she'll go through, you know, that kind of math. You know, there was the big push for number bonds that we went through that she seemed to really grasp and take hold of, and seemingly did pretty well with that. So, you know, I think she's understanding the concepts at this point. So we'll see how she continues as things get more and more, things build upon one another. I'd say more difficult, but as they build.
Okay. Well, as things build upon one another, you've seen a couple of examples of her math tests. I want to give you an example of this last math test that she took. The way that we implement and base math tests is based on basic, application, and novel questions. Basic questions are questions that we have been working towards academically in the classroom. Application questions are questions that they can utilize basic knowledge to glean that knowledge to answer application questions. Novel questions are questions that they have not necessarily been exposed to, but if they access their application and their basic knowledge, they may be able to answer. For example, this past test that you see here, Victoria scored a 19 out of 25. She had 2 out of 2 basic. She had 7 out of 19 application and 0 out of 4 novel. I don't want you to get too concerned with some of these scores because, again, they haven't been exposed to these types of questions. But in looking at these, I want you to really take a look at what she is learning as far as her grasping as far as her basic concepts are concerned, her application concepts are concerned, and then what she can glean from that as far as a novel concept. Two different websites that I would like to point you towards to help you in this. Number one, it's a website called Extra Math. And Extra Math is used to increase speed and accuracy in arithmetic. It's not just arithmetic, but at this stage, it's arithmetic. These are timed tests, if you will, implemented by a student teacher, and they aggressively seek to assess a student's basic application and novel tendencies. I know you and I have talked about Natalie's predisposition to time tests and how she does on those. How do you feel she would do with something like this?
I think it would certainly make her stretch, and I think speed and accuracy is important in building upon those mathematics. So that's something that we'll certainly look at.
Okay. And you're absolutely right. It definitely will make her stretch as far as speed and accuracy is concerned. Some students find it a little bit daunting initially simply because of the timed aspect of things. But again, to your point, I think you're right. I think with parental engagement, and I always encourage a parent to sit down with the student, especially at 6 and 7 years of age, to sit down with a student and work with them, not just simply, follow behind them and say, oh, what have you done? Because that's not necessarily conducive to a progressive learning environment. So I agree with you in that respect. Definitely take a look at this. You've got her username and her password here. Everything is set up through the school, and everything is password secure, meaning you will have the rights to take a look at that and not just go behind the fact and take a look at what she's doing. The other thing that I would like to, the other application that I would like to point you towards is called Front Row Math. It's actually called frontrowwed.com, and it tests students in different math domains. Obviously, Victoria is not going to be proficient in all 6 domains. We're working towards the different domains, as you see in our weekly newsletters, as well as our monthly newsletters and whatnot. But if you would take a look at this website prior to having her use it, and get familiar with it, I think this would be very, very beneficial to her and her age group. It's engaging, it's an interactive. They are able to earn points, and it correlates to the Ohio State math standards that we're obviously working towards. So do you think, given this information, that we are definitely meeting your goal of reaching math standards correlating to her age group? Do you have any questions regarding that?
No, I don't think so. I think expectations are being met. I think she's enjoying learning, which is important. It's
What are you doing at home to foster this? Other than providing her with wonderful experiences outside of the norm.
I think the focus on reading, also reading as a family. I know that her sister will read to her on occasion. The math, the quizzing math that we've done, and will continue to do. I think making sure that any and all of the homework that comes home is if she's having trouble with it, we'll sit down and we'll go through it together. Um, we typically have homework done at the kitchen table, so it's out in the open and it's seen, and we're right there cooking as they're doing their various tasks and homework, and so anything that comes up, we're looking over their shoulder and making sure they're doing it right.
Okay. Okay, so we've touched upon the developmental standards, the state assessment standards, the goals that you wish to see Victoria grow within. Some of the things I wanted to go ahead and share with you. I think I had this. Again, Victoria's very imaginative. She's very verbose.
Mm-hmm.
She also has a wonderful tendency to gravitate toward artwork as far as her expression is concerned, which is very much appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
She does tend to get distracted in social situations, which you had talked about, which we are working toward getting her to integrate herself into social situations versus dominating and or leaving situations.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any growth in that respect?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There's certainly been growth where she's much more pliable in situations. She takes direction a little bit more from the people that she's playing with, rather than just going about trying to force her way and completely direct play. So I think socially she's growing and kind of learning the ways of the world and learning that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and working with other people rather than just simply directing.
What are you doing at home to facilitate this?
I think for the most part it's play at home, and we've got scads of neighbors that she's playing with, and making sure that that when issues arise, that we allow the kids to handle those issues. It's not necessarily. I don't think the best play to have the parent go out and direct play. It's okay, well, I understand what this person is saying. Why don't you follow that along and see where it goes? I think play is very important in learning. And so being able to play appropriately without a lot of parental enforcement, learning those social engagements is really important.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. McCloskey. Do you have any other issues, concerns that you would like to see us address in the second half of the school year?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think keeping on with what we're doing and what you're doing in the classroom, she has nothing but good things to say about school and the things that she's learning and the way that she's learning. So I say keep up the good work, and let's have a good rest of the year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
All right.